Lyra pressed herself against the cold stone wall of the ruined building, her chest heaving as she tried to catch her breath. The wind howled across the desolate streets, carrying clouds of red dust that stung her eyes and coated her skin. She glanced over at her younger sister Mira, huddled in the corner, shaking from weakness and hunger. The girl's thin frame seemed almost transparent in the dim light. Her skin stretched tight over her bones, her small hands trembling. Lyra felt a lump in her throat, a mixture of fear and helplessness. They had been hiding in the ruins for days, moving from one abandoned structure to another, scavenging whatever scraps they could find. Every attempt to gather food had ended in disappointment. The markets were empty or controlled by gangs, and even water was scarce. Lyra's stomach ached constantly, but hers paled in comparison to the emptiness she saw in Mira's eyes. Her little sister had always been fragile, and now she was fading faster than Lyra could bear to watch. I can't," Mira whispered, her voice barely audible over the wind. She clutched her stomach, letting out a small whimper. "I'm too weak to move." Lyra's jaw tightened. She had to do something. Anything. Desperation clawed at her, urging her toward choices she never imagined she would consider. Her mind raced through possibilities, each more dangerous than the last. There was one option she had been trying to ignore, but it had become louder in her thoughts with every passing hour. The gang in the city had been rumored to provide food, but at a terrible cost. Lyra swallowed hard, hating herself for even thinking about it. It was dishonorable, degrading. Yet the image of Mira collapsing from starvation haunted her. She knew she could not allow her sister to die, not on her watch. Her pride battled with her love, and love won every time. She forced herself to rise, her muscles trembling from weakness. She pulled Mira into her arms, whispering gentle reassurances, though even she felt the tremor in her own voice. "Stay here," she said softly. "I'll find a way. I promise, Mira, I won't let anything happen to you." Mira's eyes glimmered with tears, but she nodded weakly, too exhausted to protest. Lyra kissed the top of her sister's head and slipped out into the storm, keeping to the shadows as she moved through the ruined streets. Every step was a reminder of their vulnerability, every gust of wind a threat. She had always been strong, capable of handling herself in difficult situations, but desperation made her feel fragile, small, and exposed. As she neared the city's edge, Lyra's attention caught movement ahead. Figures were patrolling the streets, scanning the ruins for anyone trying to scavenge. Panic fluttered in her chest. She ducked behind a collapsed wall, her heart pounding. That was when she noticed a human, a rare sight on this planet. He was tall and broad-shouldered, dressed in a practical uniform with supplies strapped to his back. His movements were calm, deliberate, and confident, unlike the erratic gestures of the local gangs. Lyra hesitated. Humans were outsiders here, often unpredictable and sometimes dangerous. Yet something about the way he carried himself suggested he was not like the others. Curiosity mixed with desperation, and she made a quick decision. She would approach him if only to ask for a single ration. She stepped from her hiding spot cautiously. "Excuse me," she called softly, her voice trembling. The human turned, his sharp eyes meeting hers. He raised a hand in greeting but did not move aggressively. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice calm and steady. Lyra felt a flicker of hope. We are starving," she admitted, her pride crushed under the weight of her fear. "My sister, she cannot eat, Her voice faltered and she swallowed, embarrassed and ashamed. The human's eyes softened. "I can help," he said simply, reaching into his pack and producing a small packet of food. "Take this," Lyra's mind reeled. She wanted to refuse, to protect her dignity, but hunger and desperation left no room for pride. She accepted the food with trembling hands, offering a faint nod of gratitude. The human watched her for a moment longer, as if measuring the depth of her need. Then, without another word, he turned and started to leave. "Wait," Lyra called impulsively. Can you come with me?" "My sister." He paused, glancing back over his shoulder. "Show me where she is," he said. The relief that flooded Lyra was overwhelming. Together they navigated the ruins until they reached the small corner where Mira had been waiting. The human knelt beside her sister, offering the food gently, and Mira's eyes widened with wonder and disbelief. She took the food slowly, savoring every bite as though it were a treasure beyond imagining. Lyra watched, her chest tight with emotion. She had been ready to sacrifice everything to save her sister, yet here was a human, A stranger offering help without asking for anything in return. The concept was alien and extraordinary, but even as hope began to bloom, danger lingered. Lyra remembered the gang, their offer of food in exchange for something she could never accept. She had almost made a choice she would have hated herself for forever. Her heart still raced at the thought of it. She looked at the human, her eyes narrowing slightly. Why are you helping us? He shrugged, a small smile playing at his lips. Because I can. Because sometimes helping is the right choice. And because no one deserves to starve when there's a way to survive without losing themselves. Lyra wanted to believe him, wanted to accept the kindness that seemed almost miraculous in this harsh world. But the reality of the planet was harsh. There was danger around every corner, and she knew the gang would not forget a potential meal slipping through their grasp. That night, she and her sister ate under the shelter of the ruined building, the food providing warmth and strength they had not felt in days. Mira's color returned, her energy slowly building. Lyra felt a mixture of gratitude and anxiety. She had been ready to surrender herself for the sake of survival, and now she faced a new reality. There might be a way to survive without sacrificing her honor. The human stayed nearby, setting up a small protective perimeter with simple tools and clever arrangements. He moved quietly, checking for threats, and Lyra watched in amazement. His knowledge of survival, strategy, and defense was unlike anything she had seen on the planet. He worked silently, efficiently, and without asking for anything in return. As the hours passed, Lyra's respect for him grew. She had always believed humans were fragile, unreliable, and self-serving. But Nathan Hale, this one human, was proving her assumptions wrong. He was brave, intelligent, and compassionate. A rare combination in a world that rewarded cruelty and cunning. Eventually, Mira fell asleep, exhausted but safe. Lyra sat beside her, her mind racing. She realized that the human had not just given them food. He had given them hope, a chance to survive without losing themselves. The idea was dizzying. Could it be possible that survival did not require sacrifice? Could it be that trust, intelligence, and courage could change even the harshest circumstances? Suddenly, a noise outside broke her reverie, a faint scuffling sound almost imperceptible over the wind. Lyra's heart jumped. She knew immediately what it was, the gang. They had tracked her, suspected something, and were coming for the food she had received, or worse, for her. Nathan's voice broke the tense silence. "Stay behind me," he said firmly. "They'll find you if you run. But if we act smart, we can stop them without fighting." Lyra swallowed hard. She had expected violence, confrontation, or even betrayal from humans. Yet here was a man calmly preparing a defense, not with weapons alone, but with clever traps, strategy, and confidence that reassured her. She nodded silently, ready to follow his lead. The scuffling grew louder. Shadows moved in the wind, but Nathan was ready. Simple barricades, well-placed debris, and a few clever diversions slowed the gang, buying time. Lyra watched in awe as he outmaneuvered them without a single wasted movement, turning what could have been a dangerous encounter into a demonstration of skill and intelligence. By the time the gang realized they were being outsmarted, Nathan had already guided the sisters out of immediate danger. Lyra felt her heart pounding, but a sense of relief washed over her. For the first time in days, she allowed herself to hope. Later, as they settled back into the shelter, Lyra finally spoke, her voice trembling with a mixture of exhaustion and awe. I thought survival always required sacrifice, but you've shown me something different." Nathan smiled, his calm presence grounding her fears. "Sometimes survival requires courage, but not in the way you think. Sometimes it's about making smart choices, trusting the right people, and never giving up on hope." Lyra looked at Mira, asleep and safe, and realized that hope had returned, not as a dream but as a tangible path forward. She understood now that she didn't have to sacrifice herself or her dignity to protect the ones she loved. Humans, at least this human, had proven that even in the harshest worlds, compassion and cleverness could prevail. As the red dust swirled outside, Lyra felt a quiet determination growing inside her. She would survive. She would protect Mira, and she would learn from this human, from his courage, his intelligence, and his heart. The journey ahead would not be easy, but for the first time in weeks, Lyra felt ready. She was no longer a girl driven solely by desperation. She was someone who could fight with her mind, her courage, and her heart, and she would not be alone. The night stretched on, silent except for the soft breathing of Mira and the distant howling wind. The next morning, the red dust of the planet had settled just enough for the sisters to see the ruined landscape around them. Lyra woke first, sitting up and rubbing her eyes. Mira was still asleep, curled under the thin blanket Nathan had provided. Lyra could see the improvement in her sister already. The food from the previous day had given her a faint flush, her breathing steadier and more even. Lyra felt a warmth in her chest that she hadn't felt in days, a mixture of relief and gratitude toward the human who had saved them. Nathan was already awake, standing near the edge of the shelter, examining the surrounding area. He noticed Lyra stirring and smiled slightly. "Morning," he said. His voice was calm, steady, as if the storm outside and the danger lurking around them were nothing more than small challenges to be solved. "Morning," Lyra replied, her voice hoarse. She tried to hide the awe she felt. Humans had a certain presence, a quiet confidence that seemed impossible in such a harsh place. Nathan's calm demeanor and clever mind had already saved them once. She hoped it would continue to protect them. "Your sister is stronger," Nathan said, glancing toward Mira. "We need to keep it that way. Do you have a plan for food, water, and shelter long term?" Lyra shook her head. She had survived by scavenging and hiding, never thinking ahead. Now, with Nathan's guidance, she realized that survival was more than finding the next meal. It was about thinking, preparing, and using intelligence over desperation. Nathan nodded as if he had expected her answer. "Good. Then let's start with the basics." He knelt and showed Lyra how to identify edible plants that could survive the harsh climate, how to purify water using simple filters and solar evaporation, and how to store supplies to prevent spoilage. His instructions were clear and practical, and Lyra absorbed every word like a sponge. Mira stirred at that moment, blinking sleepily. She looked up at Nathan and then at Lyra, a smile spreading across her pale face. We get to eat more?" she asked softly. "Yes," Lyra said, smiling too, her voice lighter than it had been in weeks. "And we won't have to do anything dangerous for it." Nathan handed Mira a small portion of the prepared food. The girl took it eagerly, though politely, and Lyra felt a rush of emotion. Mira had been so close to death, so weak, and now she was eating, laughing quietly, and showing signs of strength returning. It was a sight that filled Lyra's heart with determination. They spent the day preparing their temporary home. Nathan showed Lyra how to create small traps and signals to alert them if anyone approached. They reinforced the shelter with debris from the ruins and even managed to dig a shallow trench around the perimeter to make it harder for intruders to reach them unnoticed. Lyra was amazed at Nathan's ingenuity. Every small detail seemed to reflect a combination of intelligence, practicality, and foresight, a combination that, she realized, was unique to humans. By the time the sun began to sink behind the jagged skyline, the sisters' shelter was safe and organized. Mira, now full and warm, had curled up near a small fire Nathan had carefully lit. Lyra sat beside him, watching the shadows stretch across the dusty landscape. She felt a mixture of exhaustion and relief, her mind replaying the events of the previous day. She had been ready to give up everything, to compromise herself for the sake of survival, and yet Nathan had shown her another way. As night fell, the wind died down, leaving an eerie calm over the ruins. Lyra spoke softly. "I can't believe you helped us. I expected, I don't know, to have to fight, to give up who I am just to survive." Nathan shook his head. "Survival doesn't have to mean losing yourself. It's about using your mind, your courage, and the resources around you. Sometimes it's about helping others and letting them help you too. That's real strength." Lyra nodded slowly, taking in his words. She realized that the true lesson of survival was not in desperation or sacrifice, but in intelligence, planning, and courage. Nathan had shown her a different way, a way that was not only safer but more honorable. The following days were spent gathering resources, strengthening their shelter, and learning from Nathan. Lyra and Mira regained strength quickly under his guidance. Nathan taught them how to collect water from hidden sources, how to store food safely, and even how to defend themselves with minimal tools. Lyra felt her confidence returning, her fear replaced by determination. She began to see herself not as a victim, but as someone capable of taking control of her fate. One afternoon, while scouting for more food, Lyra noticed movement on the horizon. Her stomach tightened. She recognized the shape of figures approaching, moving with intent. The gang. They had not forgotten her, and they were closing in. Nathan placed a hand on her shoulder. "Don't worry," he said calmly. "We've prepared for this." Lyra followed his lead, watching as he quickly set small, clever traps along the path. Stones were arranged to trip intruders, narrow pathways funneled them into predictable positions, and small signaling devices alerted them of any movement. Nathan's confidence was unshakable, and Lyra found herself mirroring it. She realized that fear was only natural, but strategy and preparation could overcome it. When the gang arrived, they were caught in the traps. They stumbled, shouted, and tried to push forward, but Nathan's planning left them struggling and confused. Lyra and Mira watched from their shelter, hearts pounding but safe. It was the first time Lyra had seen fear in others when she had none herself. After several tense hours, the gang gave up, muttering threats that were meaningless against the defenses Nathan had built. Lyra's chest rose and fell rapidly with relief. She turned to Nathan, her eyes wide. You saved us again." And without fighting, Nathan shrugged. "Brains over brawn. Always." That night, as they sat around the small fire, Lyra finally allowed herself to think about the future. For the first time in weeks, she felt hope. There was a way to survive, a way to protect Mira, and a way to live without giving up everything she held dear. Nathan had shown her that humans, often underestimated by her people, possessed courage, intelligence, and compassion that could change lives. I think I understand now," Lyra said quietly, staring into the fire. "Strength isn't just about fighting or surviving. It's about using your mind and heart together, and trusting the right people." Nathan nodded. "Exactly. And sometimes that trust saves lives, more than brute force ever could." In the days that followed, Lyra and Mira continued to recover. Their bond grew stronger, and they learned to work alongside Nathan, combining their knowledge of the planet with his ingenuity. Together, they created a small, efficient system for gathering food and water, one that allowed them to thrive without fear of starvation or compromise. Lyra watched Mira laugh for the first time in weeks, and her heart swelled. She realized that survival was no longer just about keeping her sister alive. It was about giving her a life worth living. And Nathan had made that possible, not through threats or power, but through patience, intelligence, and a willingness to help. One morning, Nathan suggested they leave the ruins and travel to nearby settlements where others were struggling. "There are more people out there like your sister," he said. "They need help, and together we can make a difference." Lyra hesitated for a moment, thinking of the dangers, the unknowns, and the risks. But when she looked at Mira, strong and smiling, and then at Nathan, she knew the choice was clear. They could survive here, yes, but they could also do more. They could be part of something greater, something that mattered. "Then let's go," Lyra said finally. Her voice was firm, confident. "We'll help them, and we'll survive together." As they packed their minimal belongings and prepared to leave the ruins behind, Lyra felt a sense of purpose she had never experienced before. The planet was harsh, the world dangerous, but she no longer feared it. She knew that with courage, intelligence, and the right allies, they could overcome anything. Mira walked beside her, her steps steady, her laughter bright. Lyra glanced at Nathan, who smiled and gave a slight nod, as if acknowledging her growth. It was more than survival now. It was hope, determination, and the beginning of a life where they could face challenges without losing themselves. The journey ahead would not be easy. There would be more dangers, more tests of courage, and more decisions to make. But Lyra was ready. She had learned the true meaning of strength, the value of trust, and the power of human ingenuity. And with Nathan by their side, she knew that they could face whatever came next. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with shades of red and gold, the sisters and their human companion moved forward into the unknown, not as desperate survivors, but as a team bound by hope, courage, and the unbreakable will to live and thrive. For the first time in weeks, Lyra smiled without fear. She had been ready to sacrifice herself for survival, but she had learned a better way. She had found allies, strength, and hope. And now, with every step, she carried not just her sister, but a future she could believe in.